Hello and welcome to Democratic Dialogue. We are honored this month to have Saya Ameli Hajebi here with us in Gloucester from the Sunrise Movement. I'm your host, Jeremy McKeen, and we are doing tremendous amounts of sustainability work and environmental work here in Gloucester, and we have quite a star of the environmental movement from Boston to join us. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And you've done so much in the past few months that you've given kind of the older generation of greenies greater hope. The biggest thing is the Sunrise Movement. Can you tell us how you got involved? Can you tell us a little bit about how it works and maybe how kids here can get involved and some older folks can get involved?
For sure. The most exciting thing for me when I was joining the Sunrise Movement was the fact that we, as young people, had the power and the opportunity to actually take our demands straight to our politicians. You know, I come from Iran, and so to me, the notion that you could go to the State House and have a sit-in at your representative's office, or call him and ask him to support a bill, was completely out of the picture. I still remember the shivers that ran down my back one night when I was packing up my homework, about to go to sleep, and I just overheard my parents talking about how they had to take a different route to school the next day because there was someone getting hanged in the town square. And that's kind of the fear tactics that the government used. But, the fact that in the U.S., we're able to take our demands to the streets, to strike, to call up our representatives and ask them very directly to support different bills, support the Green New Deal, has been absolutely empowering and so inspiring to me.
And you took that to the street September 20th with the climate strike, millions of people involved, countless countries involved. What was that like on the streets with the Sunrise Movement, with countless others? You've done all this work to build up to it. How'd that feel to be part of something that big?
It was, gosh, that's one of the moments I'm most proud of, because my team and I started organizing the climate strike back in the summer. And we decided that we were going to really try to give youth the opportunity to lead something big. And so our entire team of organizers, for the strike that brought 10,000 people out into the streets,
Wow.
was all students under 20 years old.
Wow.
And so this was a group of college freshmen and high school students putting that event together. And, by the end of it, it just felt like having a second family, because we'd been spending so much time together and pouring our hearts out into this work. And then to see that come together, to see all 10,000 people come out that day, was just the most rewarding experience.
Wow. And you've been on tour. You've been on a media tour with Gina McCarthy, the former head of the EPA. And that in itself is amazing. How did that start? How did you two connect to do this media tour?
Yeah, it was kind of leading up to the September 20th strike. And so we ended up interviewing together on WBUR in Boston, and then writing an opinion editorial for the Washington Post afterwards. Because we realized that, even though we come from completely different generations and completely different walks of life, we've had this passion for climate and climate activism for some time. And she was around during the strike in 1970, where 20 million Americans came out into the streets, and that energy seemed like it fizzled out. But we're working really hard to bring it back stronger than before, and that brings hope both to my generation and to the generations before.
Yeah. How do we get, so you've got something going on in Boston that we don't have here in Gloucester, which is 10,000 kids in the street, which is amazing, right? So how can we get kids? Here's the thing is, you've been in high school all day. I've been in high school all day teaching. So I'm trying to inspire my students to get involved with any type of civil action. On top of applying to college, on top of homework, on top of just being a teenager. So how is Boston getting it right? And what can we do here in Gloucester to grab some of that energy?
I mean, no one said it was going to be easy.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us who are putting like hours and hours and hours of our days and weeks into organizing, it's a hard balance to strike. But the difference I think now is that we have much more communication technology that can be really helpful. And that in and of itself allows you to spend less time trying to meet in person, for example, and you can just spend an hour of your day hopping on a call over Zoom, which means that you don't have to travel anywhere. You can just kind of get to know people right then and there for that time and work afterwards. And that has definitely condensed the amount of time we have to devote to doing things that don't necessarily progress our cause.
Sure. Yeah, meetings you don't have to have because you have social media.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I forgot what Zoom was because that's how unhip I am. But I have had, I think, one call on Zoom. But the Sunrise Movement itself is extremely impressive in the way they organize. Their principles are extremely impressive. They actually pull from the old nonviolent civil direct action methods of the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. So how does that play into the next step for the Sunrise Movement in Boston, especially for you as you go into college?
Yeah, I mean, we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to do this work if it wasn't for the history and the previous movements that have kind of lightened up this path for us. And that's not to say that we're not making up a lot of it as we go along.
Yeah.
But we do get a lot of guidance from that. And, you know, people like Gina McCarthy who have spent their entire careers propelling us to be in this moment, in this political atmosphere where youth activism is not only possible, but so incredibly powerful. We really have so much potential right now to take this far and take this fight to the end to win.
Yeah. What is so there's this idea that if we had done what we were supposed to do 20 years ago, we might be better off now in terms of climate change. And here you are bringing this new optimism, younger generation doing what maybe we did 20 years ago. So in 20 years, when you're sitting here, what should be done, and what is your legacy going to be?
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping to shape the next election.
Yeah.
We're hoping to shape the next 10 years with the Green New Deal, because the Green New Deal isn't going to be just a bill. It's a complete mass mobilization of the economy towards sustainability, infrastructure, sustainable housing, and we're working really hard to make sure that we're not leaving those low-income communities and communities of color behind, because those are the places hit hardest by climate catastrophes. They're the least prepared to deal with the financial consequences, and we're making sure that we don't leave them behind. And so when I look to 20 years into the future, I see a more just society. I see a place where you don't have to be wealthy to have access to clean air or clean water, or, and I guess I submitted my college applications, on November 1st. And on that same day, I heard about how extreme the California fires had gotten, that now entire cities had to shut down because even the smallest spark could set on a fire. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, man, young people all across the country are pouring their heart and souls into an education and into a future that is on fire. And so what my hope is for 20 years from now is that we won't have that anxiety. Yeah. We'll pour our heart or soul into our education, into the future that we want to build, without having to worry about climate change.
Yeah, and this idea that the world's on fire, this global motto. I think of Greta's speech where she wants us to panic, and she's yelling at older generations and saying, "You've let us down. You stole my childhood." Who inspired you? When I remember reading that you, when you left Tehran, you came here to Boston and you saw blue skies for the first time, and that must have been, that has been a major inspiration for you. But how did you start? Were you younger? Was this recent? Something you read in English class that got you was it Silent Spring or something? What got you going?
Yeah, my answer to this question has evolved over the years, for sure. And that's because, when I thought about climate change before, I kind of thought about polar ice caps melting. I thought about temperature rising. I thought about sea level rising. And to me, that didn't seem like a part of my life. I didn't live near the ocean, so I didn't feel the consequences of that so close and nearby. It was hard for me to visualize that. Whereas with the pollution, all I had to do was just look up, and it was always gray. Yeah. And so, a couple months ago, I was able to visit my family from Iran in Georgia, and because we can't go to Iran and they can't come to the U.S. It had been 8 years since we'd seen them. My grandparents hadn't seen me grow up, and during this time that we were at this visit, we got in a car accident. And we were traveling in two separate cars, and I was in the one that didn't crash. And so I wake up, I look over, and the van that my mom, my aunts, and my little cousin were traveling with was turned over on the side of the road. And that was the most terrifying moment of my entire life, because I almost lost my entire family. And I was lucky enough that I got to have a second chance. I didn't lose anyone that day. I came close, but I didn't lose anyone. And when I think about, and that really put the climate crisis into perspective for me, because I think about how many families in Puerto Rico, in Florida, in California do not get that second chance right now.
Sure. How
many people are losing their loved ones, their families, their communities to preventable catastrophes?
Sure.
And that's what drives me forward now. The people I'm doing this work for are my family, because I don't want to lose them, and I don't want anyone else, any other kid, to wake up one day and see their home in ash.
And that's on a local slant. We live right on the ocean. We have the fishing industry. We have the properties that will go like that. If we lose the fight on the coastline, we have extremely remarkable grassroots organizations here in Gloucester and on Cape Ann. I'm hoping that every kid in Cape Ann sees this interview and sees you and is inspired. What can our local teens do? I read that Sunrise Movement, they say if there's 3 of you that want to start a Sunrise chapter, then there's 3 of you and you get our blessing and you can go. For some kid who's watching, probably not on TV, but probably on Facebook or Instagram or social media, hopefully YouTube, what can they do? What can they do today? What can they do tomorrow? What, they are you before you got involved. What kind of message can we bring to them?
Absolutely. Something that Sunrise has worked really hard to do is to make activism accessible. And so no longer do you have to be this individual with your motivation, you're really passionate about the climate movement, but it's hard to figure out how you can actually contribute. We've made it really easy to start your own hubs or get involved with hubs around. So Sunrise only started about 2 years ago, and already we have over 300 hubs all across the country.
Wow.
And that's because, that group of 3 people get together and figure out how they're going to make it work, and then everybody can work from that foundation. So something that we do is not just have these strikes and organize actions, but also train leaders. Just a couple months ago during the summer, we had a summit in Rhode Island where we invited over 500 leaders in the Northeast area to just learn how to be better leaders, to learn how to be better organizers.
Right, yeah.
And that can spread, because once you have the training, you can give that training to somebody else, and we can grow our movement that way.
Yeah, it reminds me of the union movement of, training leaders on a Saturday to then take over the next week, and then that spreads, and then you have an official movement, and then you look back and you say, how did we get here? Like, how did we do this? And then all of a sudden, it's 10,000 people strong on the streets of Boston. It's a beautiful thing. Are you watching the impeachment trials, the hearings?
I'm following
between classes,
along a little bit.
maybe.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Your grandfather, is it right that your grandfather is not the biggest climate change believer? Was that your friend Audrey? I forget.
Oh, that was my friend Audrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in your family, how has this gone? Is this going to be a point of contention, or do you have climate change support from mom, dad, sister, brother, cousins, etc.?
Yeah, my mom definitely supports the message. It's for her, the biggest thing is safety. So
Yeah, big time.
yeah, that was her biggest concern.
Yeah.
And when I was going down to Washington, D.C. last year, on December 10th, we were having a sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office, and she pulled me aside. For a second, she was like, "I don't know if you should go because I don't know how officials are going to react, and I don't want anything to happen to you." And we both kind of had to take a moment there to trust the system in the U.S. and trust that we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and just go for it. And
it went well?
Yeah.
Did you meet Nancy Pelosi? No, just.
That's the best thing about Sunrise. Even when we don't win, we win, because then we show the parts in the political system that aren't working for us.
Yeah.
And so when we go to an office like Senator Feinstein in California, a group of young people went to her office and they asked her to support the Green New Deal. And her response to that was, "I've been doing my job for 50 years.
Yeah.
That may be 5 times your age, but I know what I'm doing, and I don't like the idea of the Green New Deal, and I'm not going to sign it." And even though we didn't get her support, that video went viral.
Yeah.
And millions of people across the country saw how our political system isn't answering to young people and my generation.
Yeah. And to say no to young people, I mean, she said no to like 8, 9, 10-year-old kids.
Exactly.
And you've got an Ed Markey sticker, and I want to talk to you about the Green New Deal, and you're hoping it, and so you're going to go to college, you're going to have a wonderful time picking majors. You might change majors 4 times, like the regular college student. What kind of green job are you hoping to get in 4 or 5 years when you come out of college? What are you aiming for?
To be perfectly honest with you, I feel like I might just need to start a new industry.
Yeah?
And kind of what I'm looking into is how our use of beef and is not sustainable.
Sure.
And we need an alternative to that. And to me right now, it seems like fungi is the next thing to go for.
Have you had the Impossible Whopper?
No.
No? Are you a fan? Well,
I'm a little scared.
Vegan, it's essentially just, if you eat vegetarian burgers, it's just a big vegetarian burger.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I've had this before. But it's the Whopper. So fungi, so mushroom burgers, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been my favorite.
Totally sustainable.
Yeah, and honestly, they grow on pretty much anything.
Yeah, anything damp and dank.
Yeah. And
basement burgers, you could call it, because they grow in.
That would be a little sketchy, but maybe.
A little bit. I don't know. It could be hip. Depending on how you spin it.
Yeah.
And you were talking about being an engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your college is like the most amazing time for activism, most amazing time to find your place, to find yourself. What doesn't the other side get? There's another amazing kid like you on the other side of the political spectrum. She's going into college to major in something. We have such a divide in this country now. It's not polite. It hasn't been polite for a while. What doesn't the other side get? The kids that aren't protesting, the kids that aren't marching, the kids that don't get it yet. What do they need? Do they need some sort of kick in the pants? Is it education? What's it been for you and your friends, for people that you've reached out to?
I think we're underestimating ourselves. We're underestimating the power that we have. And so a lot of high schoolers or middle schoolers even might think, well, I can't even vote.
Yeah.
What am I really going to change?
You can't even, can you vote?
No, not yet. I'm 17 right now.
Yeah.
And so we have to realize that even though we don't have that direct connection to change policies, we still have a powerful voice. And we're going to be the ones who are going to inherit the worst of climate change. And we're taking it upon ourselves to make sure that we have a future to live in. And we just have to realize that. And we have to start organizing. It's kind of, we have to break those barriers that maybe society has set up for us before, thinking that just because you're young, you're not supposed to be involved with politics, but that's not true.
Yeah, what are some of those barriers that you see right now? Because a lot of us old timers we're on the other side of the barriers, and if you think of a history book in the last 30 years and all of the civil rights and the environmental justice movement and all the waves of feminism and all of the LGBTQ, all of these movements have happened, but we still have barriers. So what do you see coming from this new point as the barriers that we need to break down? Is it just political involvement, continued push? Is it something we haven't thought of?
I think the way that we're organizing now is definitely new. And we're working really hard to make sure that we empower young voices. So when we share our stories, we don't just listen to the most experienced person in the room. We try to open it up to anyone who has the potential. And so, at that sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office, we had 12-year-olds, 8-year-olds come up to the stage, and they were really brave because they were, standing in front of all these people and all these cameras, but they were sharing what it was like from their perspective. And that kind of helps with the understanding of anyone from any side.
They were telling stories about environmental inspiration or environmental things that they had, been turned on in terms of, becoming involved.
Right, and how it was affecting them. So one girl was talking about how, in her mixed family, she had come across a different girl in a country where they didn't have access to clean water, and she felt like she had the opportunity to stand up and say something that could possibly change a little part of her life over there, and she felt like she didn't want to have this anxiety moving forward. And she was 8 years old. So I feel like I'm 17 now, and
8 years old.
As an 8-year-old, oh my gosh.
I can't imagine. I can't. I listen to Greta's speeches, and I think, who stole her childhood? She became so depressed and so focused on climate change that for an older generation, there's the meme "Okay Boomer," which is my parents' generation. And I'm Generation X, and you're of, I don't even know if you're a millennial. You're not. No.
We're actually, there's a new hashtag going around. We are Gen GND, so we're the generation of the Green New Deal.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So what is that hashtag Gen GND?
Yeah.
Okay. So and hopefully that'll stick. So Are you guys angry at us? Did we, like, I'm thinking, like, in the movement, is there any, since World War II, we had all this wonderful growth, and then we've had 40, 50 years of not doing enough for climate change, and now we're here. Is there hope? Is there hope?
Yeah.
Enough hope?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get caught up with what we haven't done
Yeah.
or the place we are now. It can be very easy to get caught up with that and start feeling really, really depressed about it.
Yeah.
And there are cases of people who have had so much anxiety
Yeah.
and so much fear about what's going on with our climate right now that it has developed into an actual condition.
Yeah.
But we can only move forward. And so what we're doing now is, making sure that the work that we do now is timely, and that's why we need the Green New Deal. It's because it's ambitious enough to meet that deadline,
Yeah.
meet that 11-year, almost 10 years left now
Right.
deadline, to make sure that we can actually beat the climate crisis.
Well, I'm glad you're hopeful. I mean, that excites me. All of this activism, all of this amazing work you're doing, have you found time to be a teenager and just enjoy being a teenager without everything else? Before
Yeah.
college application stress, I know that that's there, but have
Yeah.
you had time just to sit back and kind of enjoy the scenery? Or are you?
Not yet.
No?
I'm being a teenager in the context of being a climate activist.
Well, just existentially,
Yeah.
Have you had a moment not thinking about activism where you've been able to enjoy, enjoy a glass of water and some time out on the quad with your friends?
Every once in a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a 5 minutes here and there.
5 minutes? That's it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a lot, and if it's not direct meetings, it's emails and yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you've been doing this. I'm glad, we are so thankful to have you, and we're honored to have you here in Gloucester, 1623 Studios. And it would be amazing if you came back and spoke. We have a climate change coalition. We have several environmental groups. So thank you so much for being with us. And this is just a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much. It's fun.
Me too.